Toughening up the rules. The battle to contain COVID ramps up as more cases are announced. Lose. Main opposition party, the KMT, suffers 2 electoral failures. The party's chairman admits there's a lot of work to do. Cap in hand. Sri Lanka asks China for help with its burgeoning debt as its economy teeters on the brink of collapse. Plus, a fight for survival. Taiwan's southern island of Xiaoliuqiu expands its fight against an invasion of iguanas. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. Taiwan is tightening COVID-19 restrictions after 17 domestic cases were reported in the last 2 days. That means stricter mask rules, suspension of some in-person classes, and revised COVID testing rules for passengers arriving in Taiwan. Bing Wang has more.
As part of the government's stricter nationwide COVID rules, people must now wear masks when exercising outdoors. With domestic cases on the rise, the government also mandated masks for other activities.
就是说，在运动、唱歌、拍照、直播、录影、主持、报道、致辞、演讲、讲课等谈话性质的工作，或是活动的正式拍摄或进行时，那就恢复要戴口罩。
Public venues will now have to abide by stricter measures as well.
希望能够严格遵守实联制、量体温，加强环境的清消、员工健康管理、确诊事件的及时应变。
Officials also announced that travelers to Taiwan must now undergo PCR tests upon arrival and wait for results at the airport. Previously, incoming travelers waited for the results at quarantine facilities.
如果能够把这个防疫的战线能够拉到更前面来。 更早来，应该对这样的一个境外大量的移入的境外移入的 case 能够更早的发现，那及早的送到医院去。
Protective measures are also being strengthened for airport taxi drivers after one of them contracted the virus from a passenger. Taxi drivers must now wear protective suits, install plastic sheets in their cars, and disinfect it before and after giving passengers a lift. The recent outbreak has also affected this elementary school in Zhongli. A student tested positive for COVID-19, so classes will be suspended for 2 weeks. Those who are around the student will have to quarantine at home.
这个安心班的跟这个孩子有密切接触的老师是学生，都到我们学校来做采检。那我们学校这个班级的学生以及老师，跟他有任课过的老师，全部都到学校里面来做采检。
The government hopes that stricter measures will help contain the outbreak so students can return to school and people can enjoy the upcoming Lunar New Year holidays without fear of contracting the virus. Patrick Chen and Bing Wang for TaiwanPlus.
To discuss the threat of Omicron to Taiwan, I spoke with Dr. Shi Xinru, director of the Research Center for Emerging Viral Infections at Shanghai University. She said despite the threat, Taiwan should learn to live with COVID and gradually reopen its borders.
So I don't think it's so easy to control the border because a symptomatic infection or only mild symptom and then may carry virus. And before symptom, the virus can spread to other people. The only thing that we can do is more vaccination rate. We can consider about how to train people working in the airport to avoid virus spreading.
How much do you think Omicron is a threat to Taiwan right now? Could we see a much bigger outbreak than we're seeing so far?
I think is about the capacity of hospitals. So probably people got COVID-19 or even not got COVID-19 but other disease but need urgent treatment in hospital. But the thing is hospital fully occupied by COVID-19 patients. Then people may die because without suitable medical support. If too many people got infected within a short period, it's still a threat to Taiwan.
The government recently brought down the booster shot interval from 5 months to 3 months. But shouldn't they be doing more to increase vaccination rates, especially in the elderly and children?
I think it's strategies for government to have safer vaccines, such as protein subunit vaccine. Medigene is one of the choice, but the thing is that Medigene still haven't got approved by WHO or other countries. We can purchase Novavax. It's another choice. It's also a protein subunit vaccine, and which has been considered safer than messenger RNA vaccine.
The government wanted to reopen Taiwan's borders after Lunar New Year. Surely that's unlikely now.
We should consider about reopening the border, but it really depends on the situation of pandemic around the world. If still so many viruses, we still got the risk. I believe virus will become milder and milder is a general rule for virus evolution. And people in Taiwan should think about we should live with virus. So we should be cautious, but not the panic.
While Taiwan is looking to stop its Omicron cluster in the double digits, several countries are dealing with daily cases in the hundreds of thousands. One nation, the UK, has decided against imposing strict curbs to slow the spread of the virus. On Sunday, the country reported over 140,000 new COVID cases and surpassed 150,000 deaths since the pandemic began. But a government minister says the UK is looking to lead the way in learning to live with COVID-19.
I hope we'll be one of the first major economies to demonstrate to the world how you transition from pandemic to endemic and then deal with this, however long it remains with us, whether 5, 6, 7, 10 years.
Taiwan's main opposition party, the Kuomintang or KMT, is vowing to make a comeback. That's after a by-election loss in Taichung and the failure to oust rock star politician Freddy Lim deepened the party's woes over the weekend. Rick Glowett reports.
Hoping for a better political future, Eric Ju, the leader of Taiwan's main opposition party, the Kuomintang or KMT, visits a temple in the southern city of Tainan. On Sunday, his party suffered a double blow. Campaigns against political opponents in the cities of Taichung and Taipei backfired.
今天开始，我们在台南刚才跟基层的里长座谈，就是我们的脚步不能停止，因为面对最重要的2022的选举，我们一定要全力以赴。
Taichung's second electoral district, once a KMT stronghold, elects a representative from the ruling Democratic Progressive Party, or the DPP, for the first time. The KMT candidate concedes to his opponent. Yen, whose father previously held the seat, nodded to the real winner of Sunday's votes, President Tsai Ing-wen and her ruling DPP, who are on a roll of political wins. More good news for Tsai in the capital, Taipei, where Taiwan's rockstar politician Freddy Lim narrowly survived a KMT-backed recall vote. On Monday, the DPP-aligned legislator headed back to work after votes failed to meet the threshold of 25% of the electorate. The defeats put the KMT's big challenge back in the spotlight. The pro-China party's image puts off many younger Taiwanese who are increasingly wary of fraternizing with the country's belligerent neighbor. And its strategy of using lawmaker recalls and referendums as a political weapon appears dead in the water.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting because the KMT has leaned into a strategy of targeting younger progressive politicians with recall votes. This is similar to how the KMT was trying to replicate its successes in 2018 with the referendum that took place last month, hoping that by leveraging on these referendum issues and framing them as being a referendum on the side administration and governance rather than the specific issues, it could gain politically. But then that didn't really work out for the KMT. And this time around, it doesn't seem to have worked out for the KMT either, in that these recall votes did not actually get it where it wanted to be.
And where does the KMT want to be? New party chair Eric Ju is under more pressure than ever to turn his party around. But with a membership that seems increasingly out of touch with the public, Taiwan's main opposition party needs to convince voters it is politically fit for office. Chris Ma and Rick Lowett for TaiwanPlus.
To find out more about what the election and recall votes mean for Taiwan, Rick Lowett spoke to Sydney Ye, Associate Professor of Communication at Northeastern State University in Oklahoma, the United States. He began by asking her what problems the KMT is facing.
There is no collaboration between the local politics and the central KNT party. It seems that they are working in their own way. So that will be a crisis for the KNT because in the upcoming elections, if the local politicians do not trust the KNT's power, and there could be a lot of unexpected outcomes. So I guess like what I'm trying to say is that the KNT would have a weak leadership in the upcoming elections for the mayors and for the city councillors.
And how do you think the DPP will react or go forward following these wins this weekend?
Definitely a good result for the DPP party, especially for the by-election in Taichung. They had confidence for the candidates, but they didn't expect that in all the areas, the candidate won over the KNT's candidate. So I think that the DPP party probably would just do what they should do to respond to people's opinions and people's will, and just lead the country, like also control the pandemic, do what they are doing. I think they should be fine.
Could you tell us more about recalls and by-elections and how they work in Taiwan politics?
I think the result of the by-election may lead to the end of the revenge recalls or by-elections. I think since 2020, there have been at least 5 recalls, if I remember the number right. Most of them were initiated by the KNT party. But you could tell from the voting numbers that Taiwanese voters are getting tired. I would say Taiwanese people are satisfied with the DPP's administration, at least at this moment. But it is understandable that the opposition parties would like to gain their support or their popularity, or they want to win the election in the future. However, I would say they need to really think other strategies to achieve their goals.
A court in Myanmar sentenced ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi to 4 more years in prison on Monday. It found her guilty of illegally importing and possessing walkie-talkies and violating coronavirus restrictions. Last month, she was convicted on 2 other charges and given a 4-year prison sentence, which was then halved by the head of the military-installed government. The cases are among about a dozen brought against the 76-year-old Nobel Peace Prize laureate since the army seized power last February. More than 1,300 people have been killed and thousands arrested since the coup. Tennis star Novak Djokovic has won an appeal against the Australian government for cancelling his entry visa. Djokovic was initially denied entry to Australia, but the court's decision means that the Serbian is now free to enter the country and compete in the upcoming Australian Open. Lawyers representing the 20-time Grand Slam champion said that he had been told by authorities that he had met the requirements for quarantine-free travel despite not being vaccinated. That's because he had previously tested positive for COVID in December. At least 19 people have been killed in a fire at an apartment building in the Bronx in New York City. 9 children are among the dead in what officials are saying is one of the worst blazes in the city for decades. 13 people remain in critical condition in hospital. More than 200 firefighters tackled the fire in the 19-story building, which began just before 11 a.m. on Sunday morning. Officials believe a malfunctioning space heater was the likely cause of the blaze. They have also warned that the death toll could rise.
We are indeed a city in shock. It's impossible to go into that room where scores of family who are in such grief, who are in pain, to see it in a mother's eyes as I held her, who lost her entire family. It's hard to fathom what they're going through.
Coming up, we take a look at how ties between Taipei and Washington continue to warm up. Details after the break.
Welcome to Legit Mando. Today we're going to learn the Mandarin phrases 我吃,我喜欢吃 and 我最爱吃。
你也喜欢吃鸡排吗？
我最爱吃鸡排。
你吃过了吗？
吃过了吗 actually used as a greeting, like saying, how are you?
I eat vegetarian food, obviously. Can I just go eat my salad? And when I'm back, you'll be done, yeah?
Nope. You're stuck with me.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Japanese newswire GG Press is reporting Taiwan is likely to end a decade-long ban on the import of food items from Japan's Fukushima prefecture following the 2011 nuclear disaster. Citing government sources, the report states a decision will be made by the end of March. But with Taiwan now looking to join the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, or CPTPP, of which Japan is a founding member, Taiwan's government is looking to remove barriers to membership. Taiwanese voters rejected allowing imports in a 2018 referendum, but that decision is not legally binding. Sri Lanka's president has asked China's foreign minister for help in dealing with a financial crisis that is crippling his country's economy. But the request for Beijing's help could raise eyebrows about the extent of China's influence in the country. James Chater reports.
All smiles here, but China's foreign minister is in Sri Lanka on serious business. Sri Lanka's president Gotabaya Rajapaksa on Sunday asked Beijing to help restructure his country's swollen debt burden, with some $7 billion in total coming due this year. He also sought concessions on Chinese imports to Sri Lanka and suggested Chinese tourists may be able to re-enter the country. The requests come as Sri Lanka's economy teeters on the verge of collapse. Nearly depleted foreign exchange reserves mean the country could soon be unable to pay for even the most basic imported goods.
We appreciate China's assistance towards our economic revival and financial stability. There is still a long way to go in establishing normalcy, but we were confident that with support from friendly countries like China, we will be able to overcome these challenges soon.
The tourism-dependent Sri Lankan economy has been battered by the pandemic. The World Bank estimates 500,000 people in the country of nearly 22 million have fallen into poverty since 2019. The government responded to its swollen debt burden by printing more money, but that devalued the currency and led to soaring inflation.
සංචරණ සීමා හින්දා මිනිස්සු එන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ අතර මිනිස්සුන්ට සල්ලි නැහැ. ඒ වගේම රෙදි මිල ඉතා ඉහළ ලෙස මිල වැඩි වෙලා තියෙනවා. 120කින් 30කින් රෙදි මිල වැඩි වෙලා ඉතින් මේවා ගන්න මිනිස්සුන්ට මුදල් නැති වෙන්නේ මේ මිල වැඩි වීමත්.
In November last year, long lines formed outside gas stations after the country's only oil refinery was temporarily shut. That was because the government didn't have enough dollars to pay for fuel imports. But any Chinese assistance may fan concerns about so-called debt trap diplomacy. Experts say this is a situation whereby China extends loans to financially vulnerable countries, which in turn increases Beijing's leverage over them. Sri Lanka has been a notable source of anxiety over the phenomenon after the government agreed in 2017 to lease the southern port of Hambantota to China for 99 years. Beijing denies accusations of debt trap diplomacy, and some Western analysts say such concerns are exaggerated. China is only Sri Lanka's fourth biggest creditor. Nonetheless, a financial restructuring could hint at a shift in geopolitical winds as China seeks to counterbalance US and Indian influence in the region.
刚刚获得民族独立解放的我们两个国家，打开了友好交往的大门，那么而且展现了我们双方不畏强权的民族风骨。
Either way, with Sri Lankan coffers almost empty, the government will be hoping any deal struck will be able to provide some much-needed economic relief. Bill Kong and James Chater for TaiwanPlus.
China is testing all 14 million residents of Tianjin after the emergence of a COVID-19 cluster. 20 residents tested positive for the virus, including at least 2 with the Omicron variant. Mass testing in the major port city is expected to wrap up within 48 hours. Tianjin neighbours the capital Beijing, where the 2022 Winter Olympics are due to begin in just weeks. The run-up to the Games has seen a doubling down of China's zero-COVID strategy, with people living in 2 other northern cities confined to their homes by COVID lockdowns. 2021 was marked by warming ties between Taipei and Washington, with an increase in visiting delegations from the US and a raft of legislation to support the country. This came as tensions continue to rise across the Taiwan Strait. Rick Glowett spoke to former director of the US's de facto embassy in Taipei, the American Institute in Taiwan, about the latest developments between the two nations.
In many ways, there's been an improvement in the relationship. Which was not anticipated. You may remember that polling showed before the US election that most Taiwanese, or a majority anyway, not most, but a majority anyway, of Taiwanese favored Trump's re-election. Because in their view, he had been very favorable toward Taiwan, and he had been very, very critical and very, had imposed penalties on China. And so most of what motivated him was simply his antagonism toward China, and not over human rights at all, but particularly over trade. So I think the biggest shift is that Biden, as a rather traditional Democrat, does care about things like human rights, does care about things like the aggression he sees, Xi Jinping's aggression towards everyone virtually, except now for Russia.
How do you see the US-Taiwan relationship developing going forward?
Now, one of the problems with the US is we keep on saying we have a rock-solid commitment to Taiwan, but we don't know what that rock-solid commitment is. So the first thing is, I think I would like to see more strategic clarity. I would like to see what the commitment is about. But I would also like to know that we first discussed it with Taiwan and they've agreed to whatever we've decided we're going to say. I think what we should do is have quiet talks with the Chinese and tell them, you need to understand from our point of view that if you attack Taiwan, we will have to get engaged. It's too important to us and to our allies in the region, to Japan.
Have we reached a point of no return for Taiwan-China relations?
It's certainly gotten worse because it was clear when Tsai Ing-wen was elected that they consider her a secessionist and pro-independence. But she's been very cautious in what she says and does, which is why I think, you know, she continues to get the support of the people. She's smart enough to know that she's got to be careful. I tend to think for the foreseeable future, I don't see that far ahead. I think things are probably okay. But, you know, there is always the possibility of an incident. You know, suppose, you know, Taiwan sends fighter jets in and sends fighter jets in response to fighter jets coming in, and there's an accident, you know, or, you know, an incident. You know, what will that produce? What will happen?
Taiwan is suffering from a green iguana invasion, which is impacting local ecosystems. Recently, residents reported seeing green iguanas swimming in the ocean and being carried by currents to end up on Xiaoliuqiu, a small island off Taiwan's southern coast. TaiwanPlus reporter Pichi Zhuang has the story.
Green sea turtles are the reason tourists come to Xiaoliuqiu, a small island in Pingdong County, 15 kilometers off the southern coast of Taiwan. But they might find more than sea turtles in these waters. A local resident shared this video online. A green iguana in the ocean, making its way onto the rocks. No one is sure how they got to this island.
带完修过来，有可能带过来把它丢在这边的。
Green iguanas are an invasive species. Many were first brought in as pets. They don't have natural enemies in Taiwan and have caused extensive damage to crops. Residents are worried that these reptiles will destroy local ecosystems.
它没有照顾好，就随意弃养，造成生态破坏，造成一些生态物种的环境的变化。
Last year alone, 20,000 green iguanas were captured by the local government, and authorities are expanding the hunt on the island.
访查跟这个移除的工作，那他们预计下礼拜2会过去哈，还会再加强这个搜索跟这个设陷阱。
Their goal is to protect the ecosystem by preventing the invasive species from spreading. Client Wang, MP to Zhuang for TaiwanPlus.
Thanks for watching TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. We leave you with footage of the northern lights appearing in the sky over Finnish Lapland. For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, please download the TaiwanPlus app. Stay safe and see you next time.